evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta.
Senator, you are a critic of this swap, are you not?
Well, no, I'm happy that they're coming home. I'm certainly pleased by that, and I share your sentiments about Bob Levinson, whose family has a presence in Florida, and we will not forget him. We will continue to bring that up. It's unacceptable that Iran has not been cooperative in that regard. I'm happy they're coming home. My problem is this. Number one, they should never have been hostages in the first place. None of them did anything wrong. And number two, I think that Iran very deliberately seized them because they know that under Barack Obama, you can trade Americans for people you want back. And so here we have 5 innocent people who were traded in exchange for 7 guilty people who were condemned in courts of law in the freest judicial system in the world. And I just think the precedent this continues to set, Bergdahl, the Cuban trade, and now this. Now you've put a price on the head of every American abroad in terms of being kidnapped or captured by unfriendly governments.
Does it make any difference to her in the equation that the 7 who were released by the United States in that swap, the Iranians, is that they were sanctions violation criminals? Criminals at the time violated our law, but now that the sanctions have been lifted, that crime sort of vanishes. But they committed a crime at the time. But does that make it any different to you?
Well, only in the sense that, obviously, they're not accused of violent crime or things of this nature, but the bottom line is they were convicted of wrongdoing. So here you are, 7 people who were convicted for legitimate wrongdoing, traded in exchange for 5 people who did nothing wrong. A few of them hadn't even been charged. There was no understanding. One of them, there wasn't even public acknowledgement they were there. And it's just outrageous. It really is. But again, I think you're going to see more of this as long as Barack Obama is president, because it's now clear to everyone that he makes trades with the Taliban, made trades with the Castro brothers, and now this. You are now creating an incentive for more governments and more countries to try to, and more terrorist groups or others, to try to get their hands on Americans. But look, we're glad that they're coming home. It took way too long. And if anything else, this should remind us and open our eyes to the fact of who Iran truly is. They are not an ally. They are not a friendly government. And they're not, from their government's perspective, even a civilized government. They are basically a terror government run by a radical Shia cleric who are willing to do whatever it takes. And in this case, hold these 5 Americans who had done nothing wrong.
I likewise am thrilled they're coming home. I have to tell you, I've been in the Hekmati home in Michigan. I spent a lot of time with Ali Razayan. I know that Pastor Abedini's family. I'm absolutely thrilled they're coming home. So, I mean, I'm still, so incredibly jubilant. In light of the
Ali
fact,
was at the State of the Union, so it was great that he was there. And Ali was at the State of the Union, and he kept Jason's story alive.
So what would you have done to get them home if you wouldn't do this swap? What would you have done if you'd walked in the office of President of the United States and they were still captive? Could you have done anything different?
Yes, I would say that no negotiations with Iran would have even begun, or at least would not have moved forward without this issue being resolved first, at the front end, not at the back end, at the front end. Now, I think I'm very suspicious of this deal with Iran to begin with. I think there should have been specific sanctions against Iran simply for the fact that they took these 5 Americans hostages. There should have been specific sanctions just for this, not to mention the missile deals or the missile activity they're undertaking, and of course not to mention their nuclear program. So I think we would have been much firmer at the front end in insisting their immediate and unconditional release, and not somehow encourage them to roll them into this whole deal where, again, you're getting a trade of 7 people convicted in a court of law in exchange for 5 Americans who did nothing wrong and were hostages. They were not prisoners. They were hostages.
All right, let me turn to 2016. You're getting hit pretty hard today by Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who says, in reference to you, this is a first-term senator who still is learning where the men's room is in the Senate, let alone figuring out how to lead a country. I agree with what Senator Rubio said himself. He said just 2 weeks ago, senators and congressmen can't solve America's problems. I couldn't agree with him anymore. Your response to the governor tonight?
Well, Chris doesn't want to talk about his record. His record is abysmal. I mean, in terms of the things that he agrees with Barack Obama on. Chris Christie supported Sonia Sotomayor, and we've read his words on the record. He was a supporter and urged the Senate to confirm her. Chris Christie was a vehement supporter of Common Core. Chris Christie ran for office because he wanted to pass gun control. And Chris Christie made a personal contribution to Planned Parenthood, which he now denies, but for years stood by. And so the bottom line is that my problem is not with, I like Chris as a person, but our Republican nominee has to be someone that is going to unravel the Obama agenda and the damage Barack Obama has done to our country, not someone that agrees with gun control, Planned Parenthood, Common Core, and judges like Sonia Sotomayor. And so that's what we're going to continue to focus on. I don't attack people. His record is not an attack. It's his record.
Senator, thank you very much. Nice to see you, and it's going to be a busy 2 weeks to Iowa. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.